What's up, world? This is Ben, and welcome to episode 2 of Art Thrive Academy. Today's guest is David Matz. David is a Las Vegas-based entertainer, entrepreneur, inventor, and creator. He has performed for over 30 countries in dozens of national and international TV spots and Hollywood productions, and he has performed acrobatics and stunts in dozens of blockbuster titles like Wonderwoman, House, Bones, Grey's Anatomy, and 2.5 Men. He has been on America's Got Talent, DOS Supertalent, and performed for hundreds of NBA halftime shows and sporting events. David is also an entrepreneur, founder of Volta Creative, and the creative director of Veserium, the world's first VR sound sculpting group. He just finished construction on his 4,400 square foot training and creation studio here in Las Vegas, and he sat down with me to talk shop about how to build a sustainable career as an entrepreneur in the entertainment industry. Push is open. Nice.
Welcome to the Batcave.
David, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, first off, I just want to sort of see how you're doing. What are you doing now that we have a little bit of time off? How are you passing your time these days?
Kind of enjoying it, just taking the downtime, catching up on projects. Like you said, we finished construction on the 4,400 square foot creation space. It's been 3 years that I've been working on this project, from start to finish, to getting the permits, getting everything in line. We had the foundation poured right as this hit, so there were lots of able bodies willing to help. We got 2 households together that had already been, not cross-contaminated, but we had already been exposed to each other doing circus together.
Gotcha.
And yeah, everybody pitched in and we built the space in about 6 weeks. Now that that's done, I'm just focusing on other hobbies that I've been ignoring, like FPV drones, kind of a hobby I've wanted to get into filming, and just kind of branch out a little bit.
That's awesome, man. Cool. Well, first I just wanted to really appreciate you for first off taking the time to do this, and then also just for always bringing such a new and interesting edge to the entertainment community. Every time that we've met or worked on a project together, you're always just doing something new, and I feel like that ability to kind of always be pushing the needle forward is really a powerful thing.
Oh, thanks a lot.
And one of the things that I'm always curious and I've always wanted to ask you is what kind of kid were you, like, growing up? Like, what was your childhood like?
I was always a nerd growing up, video gamer, just kind of curious. The kid that would take apart like any electronics that would come into the house.
Nice.
Not always successfully, but like the more and more I did it, the better and better I got at it.
For sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Mostly the kid that I was. Always curious and just kind of exploring and trying new things.
Nice. What was your favorite video game?
I was a big Legend of Zelda
Yes, me too.
Gamer, but like all through high school and college, I was a competition video gamer for a little bit. And I competed in Dance Dance Revolution and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4.
Nice.
So
the beginning of your acrobatic career, right?
Yeah, right?
That's great. Oh my gosh. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Lancaster, California. An hour outside of LA.
Okay.
A little desert town with not a lot going on. Yeah.
Cool. And did you sort of have dreams of going to LA and getting into that scene, or going into the circus scene as a kid, or did that come later?
It came way later.
Cool.
I had no, like,
you didn't even know it was there.
Zero idea
Yeah.
that would have ever been a thing.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, similar here. Very cool. Oh, so what about your athletic training and your background? You do a lot of different things. Right now you primarily do the steer wheel, but I've seen you used to do aerial, you used to do hand-to-hand, all sorts of stuff. Where did you get your training and get your start with all of that?
In college, I had never done any performing, any type of anything. Had a crush on a girl in college. We had a math class together, and I was like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to get into dance because I knew she was a dancer.
Right.
Walked in, auditioned. It turned out it was actually an audition to be part of the performance dance troupe for the college, and they needed guys.
Gotcha.
And Cindy Littlefield, if you're watching right now, thank you so much for giving me a shot. She, with no formal dance training, pulled me in. I started dancing 5 days a week, got into that, and then we had a circus program that partnered with the dance department a couple years into that.
Oh, that's very cool.
So yeah, that was kind of how I got into this whole world.
And that was high school or college?
College.
College, okay, cool.
Yeah, hadn't really done much athletic before that besides like playing Dance Dance Revolution.
Gotcha. That's very cool. So about how old were you when you got your first like professional gig?
Probably 21, 22.
Okay, nice. So like right around the college year?
Yeah, I think actually it was probably 22 because I had done 2 years of Chinese acrobatics, or acrobatics in general. He taught us. Yinping Zhang came in from Fujian, China's national acrobatics troupe.
Okay, awesome.
Trained us for 2 years in juggling, unicycling, hoop diving, Chinese pole, like aerial, just a great circus education.
Yeah. And
then we also got connected with some different companies to do low-paying gigs. We made like $50 and we're like, yeah, we're paid acrobats doing Chinese pole in a tent in 100 degree heat. But that led to my first legitimate contract with Winnie McKay and the LA Circus in Japan.
Dope.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. And then what about the business side of things? Is that something that you had mentioned, actually, we were talking earlier, I believe you said you started your first business when you were about 10 years old?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that adventure.
So when I was about 10, I started getting into computers, but I also wanted to ride a dirt bike because we're in the desert and there's all kinds of jumps and things to explore. My parents are like, yeah, we'll buy you a dirt bike. And they bought me a BMX.
Okay.
Super disappointed 10-year-old. My parents couldn't afford a dirt bike. They didn't know what it was. And they're like, well, if you can afford one, we'll let you have it. And that was the start of my entrepreneurial ways. They just kind of kickstarted that unbeknownst to them. So I had just built my first computer because I couldn't afford to buy one from HP, Dell, whatever. So put all the pieces together, and then I realized that all of their friends needed work with computers, fixing them, viruses, whatever.
Nice.
Then my dad went with me down to City Hall. We got a business license. He helped me make business cards.
Oh, wow.
And within a couple months, I was able to afford a motorcycle at 10 years old.
That's great.
So
it was a product of necessity.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great. And then did you pursue any type of education or business education in school or anything like that? Or was it just something...
So I have a degree in business administration, an associate's.
Great.
And then I have a bachelor's in communication, PR, and marketing.
Nice.
But I don't attribute most of my success to that. I attribute it more to in the field knowledge.
Sure. And
just college. I kind of hopped around. And the only reason I got those degrees was because I'm like, oh, well, I have a natural tendency to this.
Sure.
I would be able to get a job that would be fairly easy, but I hopped around in college from programming to dance, singing, acting, photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Nice. And how about outside of school? Were there any, you mentioned your acrobatic teacher, were there any mentors or people that just really helped sort of form you as you were growing up?
As I was growing up, I had my dirt biking coach. We had some family friends that were very business oriented that helped shape me. Yinping probably had one of the biggest influences on me. And then also one of my close friends now, David Posnanter, former coach. I got my first sear wheel lessons from him.
Oh, okay, cool.
But it was a sear wheel act creation workshop. And it really changed the way that I looked at act creation, looking at it as a combination of what I want to see as an artist, as well as what the public wants to see, because they're not always one and the same.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. And what about currently, as far as mentors and inspirations go, who are your kind of the people you're looking at today to just kind of motivate you and all of that?
Currently, mostly Tim Ferriss and Derek Sivers, who we talked about earlier.
I'll have to look into him more.
Yeah, definitely. If you haven't, check out his podcast on the Tim Ferriss Show and his separate podcast, but that whole sign of hell no, hell yeah, or it's a no. I attribute to him, but there's somebody else that it's also attributed to. Those would be my... I'm trying to think if there's any. Tom Bilyeu as well.
Yeah, he's good. I've been watching some of his stuff.
I definitely fall under those categories more than the Gary Vee mentality or what's the 10X guy? Grant Cardone? Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of him or Gary Vee personally, but If it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah, those East Coast personalities can get a little harsh. I just kind of listen to everybody and pick and choose the things that work.
Exactly.
But no, Tim Ferriss, I've watched a lot of his stuff, and I always forget his name. You said Tom.
Tom Bilyeu.
I pronounce it wrong. Yeah, but yeah, he
I might be
really
pronouncing it wrong. I don't know.
Sorry, Tom.
Yeah.
Cool.
Actually, it's funny because like I hadn't heard of him, and I did an event where I did my performance right before he gave a keynote, and I listened to the whole thing, and I was like, oh my god, okay. Yeah. Chatted with him, thanked him, and then just started.
If you like him, do you know Lewis Howes? Do you know this guy?
I don't.
Oh, you should check him out. He has a podcast called The School of Greatness.
Okay.
And he covers a really wide range of stuff, but it's everything from like the super mindset stuff to the really technical like business stuff. It's
nice.
Cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a cool one. All right. So yeah, big picture. Let's say 5 or 10 years from now, what is it that you're hoping? Like everything that you're doing is obviously growing and continues to grow. Where do you want it to be in 5 or 10 years?
It's a good question because I try not to think that far out.
Sure.
But I have 2-year goals in mind.
Yeah, next big step.
Next big step is getting my YouTube channel up and running. Well, it's up and running, but getting a big enough following to where I can just be constantly creating for that, where companies throw jet engines at me or whatever kind of things to kind of combine technology and circus without having to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the kind of silly ideas that I have on my walls. And also having, well, before the quarantine hit, what I had wrote in the concrete in my building is to have a full show on the strip competing with Cirque that's all tech-based by 2022.
All right.
So those are kind of like the 2 pathways that I'm going on, but I'm open to whatever as long as I'm being creative and
Gotcha. Actually, that kind of brings up a question. So when you set goals, are you very what's the word? Are those like, this is the thing, I'm only focused on this, or is it sort of this is the ideal, but if there's something better that presents itself, you sort of pivot in that direction? Yeah,
definitely. I'm more like, this is the ideal, I'll start heading in that direction, but if I feel like most circus artists are the right combination of OCD and ADD, and I definitely fall more into the ADD category, which has been a blessing and a curse. That's why I can combine electronics and soldering and programming and whatnot with relatively high-end acrobatics, and but also I get distracted very easily.
Yeah, we all do this. There's so much cool stuff that you want to try out. I get it. Very cool. So with that, do you have any helpful or daily habits or daily musts that you do that help keep you focused on your goals, keep you moving in the direction you want to?
The main one I do is lists.
Okay.
If I didn't have lists, I wouldn't be able to move forward in any usable capacity.
Gotcha.
I kind of trick my brain also into, like, I'll do certain things out of habit, like I answer all my emails, get back to clients as soon as possible. So many times just being the first person to respond will get you the job.
Oh yeah, I've learned that lesson.
Yeah, so when I'm still waking up and not at my highest mental capacity, I just try to handle all the emails, all the busy work.
Okay.
And then those will be the first things that I put on the list, and I immediately cross them off just so I feel good and I'm motivated to keep going.
Gotcha. And now, do you organize your lists in any particular way? Do you have like these are the fun things I want to do and these are the things I have to do? Do you have any system behind it, or is it just kind of?
I just kind of put everything on it, and what I get done what I get done. Yeah. If there's something super pressing, obviously, like,
goes to the top.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'm just always curious to see how people organize those things.
Oh, I'm not a very organized person.
But so it's funny. Like results speak for themselves. So sometimes you don't even realize you're doing something that's super effective because you stumbled across it. You didn't put much thought into it. So I always wonder. Awesome. And how about, I know I watched one of your videos and you talked about some things like the rule of 5 and you watched some of the Tim Ferriss. So I'm curious, are there any principles or rules that you really feel like have been super effective and helpful as you've developed all of this stuff?
The 80-20 principle has been probably the most effective thing I've applied. I hit a point of burnout when I first created the Volta wheel, where I was pulling all-nighters, trying to just bug test and fix things along the way.
Yeah.
And then I started cutting out. just the stuff that wasn't bringing the most results. That would be one. Sorry, give me a second.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Put that away.
I would say once you're established, use the 80-20 principle.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, because in the beginning, I just said yes.
Yeah.
You've got to say yes to everything, try a bunch of things out. I mean, there were times that I'd be offered like a unicycling gig, and I'm like, yeah, of course I can do that.
Sure.
And then like looking up online immediately, like, how can I buy a unicycle and get it in time to learn?
Right.
So, yeah, just say yes, try everything, and then see what you really enjoy. And then once you're kind of established, then you can start cutting back and use 80-20 analysis.
So you sort of said yes to everything until you found the things that were working the best, and then you split that 80-20 from there. Kind of
exactly.
Your
Yeah, because a lot of people hear that and they apply it too soon.
Right.
Because you really have to see what works first.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say is your sort of current 80-20 split as far as like the things you've got going on in your life?
Sorry, one more time?
Well, so like right now, you're putting about 80% of your energy into one thing and 20% into the other things, right?
I was looking at 80-20 analysis more as like, okay, which clients are bringing in the most work.
Okay.
I don't really apply it to myself like that. I'm a little too ADD to be structuring everything like that.
I see.
So it's more like, okay, well, 20% of my clients are bringing 80% of the revenue. Let's double down on those clients.
I see.
And cut out the other 80%, so I have more time to be working on creative projects or more interesting.
Right. So it's kind of a matter of streamlining what's working so that you can free up as much time as possible so that you can have that time to create and think and do new things that are totally outside.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Favorite rules and principles. Where do you see the entertainment industry heading over the next few years, especially considering everything that's changing right now?
That's a very good question, and I'm not quite sure where it's going, but my hope, or at least where I'm going to be trying to push things, is to integrate technology with performance in a more meaningful capacity, because I've had so many people talk about how amazing MJ1 is, like with the technology and the fusion, and then I'll go and see a show like that and I'm like, wow, Cirque barely scratched the surface. They put a shiny polish on an already amazing product, but they didn't like blend the two in any way that makes them greater than the sum of their parts. Like,
right. Yeah, so you still feel like there's a lot of room to grow.
A lot, to make the art more impactful, make it more interesting, and to make just both shine that much brighter.
Yeah, nice. There's a great speech by Bob Iger, I believe I'm pronouncing it right. He's the CEO of Disney, and he talks about how when they pivoted in the early 2000s, I think, because Disney wasn't doing so great, what they did that made a huge difference is they put a lot of attention, like their 80-20 was, they put almost all of their attention into technological advances, especially in animation. That's why they acquired Pixar and did all of this stuff, and that was huge in creating what is now Disney, which is this, insanely massive company. So I was thinking about you specifically and that with the entertainment industry, how it's interesting because there's actually not a lot of people who really put the technology first. But that could become more and more that just determining, that distinguishing factor as we move forward, especially now that live shows are less common for a little bit, so the technology is going to have to hold some weight to get people's interest.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Nice. So when you were starting out, or I guess over the last few years as you've been doing this, is there actually anything you sort of wish you had done differently as far as approaches or anything?
I don't want to say like there's anything I want to do differently. Necessarily, I guess just invest sooner.
Okay.
Invest in myself and make my money work for me a lot sooner, because I didn't start doing that until I was in my 30s, even though I had a decent cushion of cash like throughout my performance career.
Gotcha.
I always made sure I had a side hustle or something to make sure I wasn't like in a compromising position when I was negotiating or anything like that.
Sure.
But I wish I had made my money work for me sooner.
Right.
Because that, over the past 6 years, I went from having a decent little cushion to being able to afford a house and a space, and to be able to work on whatever projects I want, which could have happened much sooner had I had done that.
Yeah. So I've always felt like the ability to invest in yourself is also kind of a reflection of having confidence in yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think building that confidence, especially in an industry like this one that's high competition, high risk, it can be challenging. What do you feel has been helpful as far as building or maintaining the confidence to do that, to say, you know what, I believe in this idea, I'm going to invest in it, I'm going to move forward, and I'm not going to hesitate?
I feel like having that safety net.
Okay.
Like, that's one of the things I feel like in our society we really glorify the risk takers.
Sure.
But most of the risk takers aren't such. They practice risk mitigation. Like Richard Branson is a perfect example. Like, people talk about him starting Virgin. He made an arrangement to where he could give that plane back and get his money back.
Right.
I think the most confident performers are the ones that have that safety net, and they know that they can turn down the gig, or they can focus on making themselves better without the need for, like, oh my God, how am I going to pay my rent this month?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's huge. It's one of like the foundational rules of investing is always protect your downside, right? Like if you and it's funny, we glorify the risk, but the reality is you can take bigger risks when it's not your life that's actually on the line.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and just make better decisions too.
Yeah. And with that, was there anything that really stood out that you feel like was a great decision? You feel like you just hit it on, the nail right on the head?
I was going to say just not being afraid to fail.
Sure.
I feel like that was the biggest thing that, like, I failed as a dancer, like, but that led me into circus, gave me the ability to count to 8, which very few acrobats have.
It makes a difference.
And that ended up getting me quite a bit of work where, like, there was one contract in Niagara Falls where none of the acrobats could count to 8. So I'm like, okay, well, this cue in the music's happening. I started explaining it to him. And then the director was like, oh, we have this other, like, worldwide tour that's coming up. Right. Would you be available? I'm like, yeah, I'd totally be available. And those type of failures lead into other things. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
definitely. Yes. All right. Okay, so right now, let's bring it to the present. What are the projects that you're most excited about, either that are happening now or that you feel like you're going to be able to jump into once things start moving again?
I think the 3 that I'm most excited about are just drones in general.
Okay.
I've got a few different drone projects that I'm working on, but flying FPV drones has been super fun.
Nice.
On its own. And for those that don't know, this is an FPV drone. You basically wear a VR headset and see what it sees. But yeah, so drones in general, I'm going to be working on drone swarms as well and having them interact with performers, which I have yet to see anyone else doing.
And that's with that, like I've seen the synchronized drones.
Yeah, the Intel type.
Yeah.
But I'd like to bring that to stage.
I think that's a great idea.
Veserium, which is the VR sound sculpting. You can check them out at veserium.com or
we'll link everything up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then the third will be the space. Just seeing where that goes, and if anybody has an idea or a bigger project like outside of the scope of their possibilities and wants to submit an idea, shoot me a message, send me an email, because that's what I'm building it for. I want to help other people build bigger and better things with it.
That's awesome. Actually, yeah, that touches on something that I also remember. I think we had a conversation about at an event a few years ago. We were talking about, the value of cross-promoting and helping within the industry, within performers, and how that's actually a huge kind of safety net in a way, and also a way to help lift yourself up as well as others. You want to talk a little bit about that, like kind of your perspective on how helping other performers is actually helping everybody?
I mean, it's just like not necessarily I scratch your back, you scratch mine, but the more value you can add to all of those around you, the better they're going to be off, the more they can help you. It just, everybody lifts each other up. And I think we're in a very special place with circus, because it's like, no matter what discipline you are, it doesn't feel as competitive as the dance world. It feels more like a family, and that we all kind of do help each other out, because it's more of a tight-knit community.
Definitely. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so where can we find your work? I know you've got a few different channels and stuff. Just list like the main ones that you'd like people to check out.
Yeah, David's Dream Factory on Instagram and on YouTube.
Okay.
And then Veserium. We might have just changed our name to the Sound Sculptors, because we're turning it more into a collective.
Gotcha. As
we branch out and start messing with new technologies and incorporating different ideas. So those would be the main two.
Okay, nice. And on Instagram?
David's Dream Factory.
David's Dream Factory, cool. And Facebook?
Facebook, David Matz.
David Matz, okay. M-A-T-Z, right?
Correct.
M-A-T-Z. Awesome. All right, man. The final question I'm going to ask, and you can take a second if you need to think about it, but I'd like to know, for you, what makes a piece of art or performance truly great?
For me, it's that combination of what the artist finds interesting and finds value in, and meeting in the middle with what the audience does. That's kind of how I've based my whole performance career, because I could do the most impressive trick on a sear wheel, and the audience isn't going to understand it. Right. So it's not necessarily that you need to like go super mainstream with your art and appeal to the masses, but it does need to be relatable and understandable in a way, and that's, to me, what makes really great art. It's just for anybody, not anybody, but for most people to be able to like watch a performance piece and understand and be able to take away something from that. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's great. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, brother.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.